10 years ago, a bold vision was born, a dream to unite voices, strengthen partnerships, and place early childhood development at the heart of national dialogue in Kenya. My name is Sally Mora. As the programs coordinator of ECD Network for Kenya and a global leader of the World Forum Foundation, I am deeply honored to help tell this story, a story of collective effort, quiet heroism, and unwavering belief in the power of the early years. This is our story, this is our legacy. Welcome. Hi, Dr. Lyne.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to finally have an opportunity to talk to you. Maybe you can
Likewise.
begin with a little bit of introduction, who you are, what you do will be helpful for us to get to know you.
So, well, thank you for your interest in talking to me. I'm a child psychiatrist by training. I trained in the UK, but I have spent my professional career setting up mental health programs in emergencies for 10 years for a big medical NGO called International Medical Corps, then with different programs as an independent consultant. But during that time, and this was in emergency settings, I became more and more interested in early child development and what happened to the youngest children in emergencies. This is because I saw the need, and that interest in what happens to children in emergencies led then again to an interest in prevention as well as response.
You talk about integration, and basically there has been evolution over the years and the need to integrate both programs so that we can support caregivers. Talk to us about how successful that looks like in terms of having both caregivers come together. Do they understand these programs? What is the understanding that you get on the ground before you begin the integration and after you've done
I
the
don't think
program?
mothers particularly don't find it difficult, though they're often surprised. I mean, the UNICEF and WHO, since 2018, when they produced their nice diagram, have promoted what they call a nurturing care framework, and it's addresses all the needs of the child, which means protecting and supporting the parents, security, health, nutrition, education. It's got those blocks around it. So they see when I've talked to professionals, I have many friends in both organizations, they get what we're trying to do because they take the nurturing care framework is an integrated framework. On occasions, we've been a bit more challenging in saying we don't feel that the mother is getting enough primacy in this framework, only because if you don't have a mother, even if you have a wonderful father, and I've seen this myself, if you don't have a mother, the child's health really suffers. She's the breastfeeder. She is usually, in most societies, the primary carer, and she needs support. An example of that is that many programs will focus on reproductive health, antenatal and postnatal, as essential to the good care of the child. But then around 9 months or 2 years, depends on the country, mother's health is not interesting anymore. And we've done the program now in, I've lost count, 1, 2, I think this is our 5th country. And in each country, when we've done feedback sessions, mothers have said, it's lovely that you taught us about my health, because no one's ever talked to me about my health before. No one's ever talked to me about how to prevent breast cancer, how to recognize it, what to do about bleeding, what about hypertension and diabetes. And yet these are common health threats. So you might think, well, why am I talking about mum? We're here to talk about early child development. Well, the early child development of the child depends on a healthy mother, which is why I love working with my husband as mama, because he focuses on that and I focus on the little one.
Being in the humanitarian space, and you've worked alongside shareable concepts and shareable concepts, and you've particularly mentioned before that we have to design programs that work for everyone. And share to us the experience behind designing programs for mothers who are on the go.
Yeah.
How has that been like, and what do we need to know as a globe, as people that want to develop work for each and every person? What is some of the shareable concepts that we can borrow from you based on the work that you have done?
Of course, an ideal positive parenting program takes place in a stable community. The mothers perhaps come once a week at a time of their own choosing, especially if they're working mothers. They get to know each other very well. They have a common space, maybe, a community centre or whatever. They love to come. Their babies play together. And over the year, their knowledge grows. There's no rush, there's no pressure, and you can really teach what you like. If you're working in an emergency setting, for example, after the Haiti earthquake, which was one of the first sort of iterations of this program, one of the things that was very common as an emergency intervention when I began my career was child-friendly spaces. But what I noticed about those child-friendly spaces was that they were fabulous for 3 to 5-year-olds. Children were hurtling around, the carers were good, lots of games. But it was an impossible space for a mother and a baby. There was nowhere to breastfeed. It was big public space. It was chaos. Little children were hurtling by you. You really needed a separate space.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that humanity, to my knowledge, I mean, it may have happened elsewhere without me knowing, a lot of us, not me, I wasn't so unique here, saying we don't need just a breastfeeding space. People had got that. You need a tent for mothers to breastfeed. We need a baby-friendly space. And I and my NGO started baby-friendly spaces, which was great, where we began doing this education, around breast. But of course, it was a short-term space, and it was temporary because, mothers were hopefully going to move on to better accommodation than a squalid tent. And so they were leaving. So I wanted to find a way to intervene more quickly and give mothers at least some basic knowledge that they could take with them. And we've worked in both stable communities like this, which is fabulous. But the intervention also works if you're working in a community where, as I described this morning, mothers are on the move. Maybe they're going to leave the place they're staying because they want to cross the border or they've just arrived, and they only want to come to 2 or 3 sessions. All right, come to 2 or 3 sessions. You'll learn something, and maybe you'll enjoy them, and you'll think, oh, there's only 4 more sessions, I'll stick around. 12 sessions, you can get a lot done and achieve a lot. It's a beginning. I don't pretend that we cover everything.
What are some of the words we can borrow or put together that mean the same? Over the years, we've seen evolution of words that basically describe the work we're doing and some of the concepts that maybe we need to integrate in our programs.
Give me some examples.
Responsive caregiving.
Yes, it's interesting how it's changed the language, isn't it? I like responsive caregiving, and if you go on the website of the Centre for Developing Child, which I recommend, by the way, for example, on language, I love the UNICEF Care for Development leaflet. We've given it to mothers. It's a 1-pager, and it's got so much information with very simple words and diagrams in 1 page for each stage of development, which is why I always give it out. And at the bottom, it has a sentence, I don't know, about the importance of love. But I think the word care, of course we should care for our children, but I prefer the word love. If we love our children, what follows is that we care for them, we feed them, we play with them, we communicate with them. But I would like love to be central in every occasion when we talk about, so responsive, caring, they're all good words, but for me, they don't have the power of love.
In your view, what impact has framing had in the early child development context?
What do you mean by framing?
So, for instance, I would use the word nurturing care is framed for the 5 thematic areas it advocates for: early learning, responsive caregiving. So that is a framing.
Yes.
So, in your view, how has framing of words in our work really impacted ECD? Generally.
I think you're better at this stuff than me. I am. I like the nurturing care framework because it brings together both the physical and the mental, for one thing, health, nutrition, and stimulation and play and education. So I like that. That's a good framing. I can't at this instant think of another framing that's particularly relevant to the world. I do. And I tend to be... that tends to follow what I do rather than, I'm unlike you. I'm probably spending less time academically looking for frameworks than I am just doing it and practicing it and seeing what works. So at this moment, I can't think of a framework apart from nurturing care.
There's something that is very unique, and I've never had it before. And you mentioned about mothers being enough primacy. You don't see enough primacy of mothers in the work that we do. Delve a bit deeper for us to really understand what that means. I know you explained we need to understand that at the core of everything, if the mom is not okay, then our children will not be fine. So every other thing and every other work we put into making sure that the children are fine, if we forget the mom, if we forget their mental health and their physical health, all of this is basically going away. So is there any term that has ever been there to sort of describe mother's primacy, such that for an advocate like me who'd like to advocate for moms and children, what can I use? Can I say mother's primacy? What are some of the...
I definitely talked to Asmama about this because he's really educated me on this. I mean, before I started working with him, I was pretty careful to use the word parent. In Nicaragua, I even did a fathers group, and I want to be clear before we go to mothers that fathers are equally important. But bizarrely, in a sense, fathers' health does get quite a lot of, not in the nurturing care framework, but if you look at the nurturing care framework and you look at the language, it quite rightly, in a way, it's parents, carers, and in documents I used to write 5 or 6 years ago, I used to say parents and carers, because I had to be clear that I wanted to include fathers and so on. I still want to include fathers or non-biological caregivers, and indeed if brothers and sisters, older sibs come to the groups, I am so happy.
Yeah.
However, I have become increasingly concerned that in that emphasis on parenting, we've actually forgotten that whether we like it or not, in most places in the world, it is the mother or mother figure. She might be an older sib because mother's died. She might be a granny because mother's gone off or whatever. But it is a mother figure that does the work. And her personal needs and health have, and as Mama has really taught me, have not had the attention they need. And then he started to show me the statistics of what happens when a mother dies and how that impacts the child. Less, I'm sorry to say, than when a father dies. And we know how many single mothers are struggling. And I've heard stories in this workshop and in others. And sadly, many of the mothers we're working with are dealing with very stressful situations at home, And that's not paid attention to either. So I always do a session on stress. If I'm working in a war zone, I was in northern Ethiopia a couple of years ago, I'll also be addressing grief and loss. And mothers bring up terrible situations in which they're in. So we've got to pay attention, because if we don't, child's health will suffer. But that isn't the only if. If we don't, the mother suffers. And I'm here for both mother and child. Children are vital, but so are mothers. And I feel they're getting left out somehow. So that's where we focus on.
And what unique lesson has your vast experience shown that can be a lesson for all? And I know you've really touched a bit more on moms and emphasis on them not being left out. But if you were to combine all the years of experience that you've had in the spaces that you've worked in, what unique lesson has your vast experience shown? And that can be a lesson for all of us.
It's not the topics that are missing. What I was told, I was given some feedback by our lovely colleague from the parenting, what do you call it, the positive parenting program, who's been watching us.
Yeah.
And she said what I'm doing differently is the interactivity of the training that we do. I am so tired, and I have done them myself to my shame, of PowerPoint lectures where the listeners are just falling asleep, usually because you're teaching in the long, possibly colonially imposed language, not translating, but secondly because you're using lots of slides with text and you're teaching. What I'm and Asmama are trying to do in our groups is draw out the astonishing local and actual knowledge that mothers have, and they have a lot, and reinforce the things that they actually know but aren't confident about. Fully discuss and challenge with them the things that might be doing harm and they hadn't realized. Let's take yesterday's discussion on harsh parenting. And I think, by the way, I think including the harsh parenting topic, I maybe do something there that many, I don't know, do you do positive discipline in your programs? Sometimes this is left out. You've got to tackle it in because harsh parenting is really a problem, and it's global. And so, but we bring out what the good stuff mothers know, because they're not sure about slapping their children, and they're glad to have it confirmed that actually it maybe does some harm. And there are other methods, especially if you build on a week of responsive, loving, playing. We think, my goodness, my child's behaving really well. And that comes from a week of seeing them here. And that's the other thing. So there are two. One, we're very interactive. We don't use PowerPoint lectures. We draw up, we ask questions, we reinforce the good stuff, we challenge mistakes, we give them new information, but I think in a very interactive way. The second thing we do is we include the children in the training. Now, I recognize that that is slightly distracting, but at the same time, it's a powerful addition to the learning. If the child is there, I don't need pictures on the wall. I say, oh my goodness, look at this infant. What are they doing? And they're playing lovingly with their sib, or I have 3 bits of video just from this workshop that I'm going to use for teaching with a 4-month-old, an 18-month-old, and a 2-year-old, all playing with cups, but in a totally different way, but using their imagination, using their muscles, having a game. And you see what magic goes on, and the lovely interactions between mothers and children, between the children themselves. I love that. I mean, that's why I love doing this work.
It's so amazing, and I can summarize one thing that for me is my takeaway home. You reinforce what they know. You come to the
good stuff.
Yes, the good stuff.
I'm not reinforcing slap your children. I'm challenging that.
And I think and what you're telling basically the entire sector is a lesson for everybody to take home. Make it interactive. And if you make it interactive, then you win in whatever you want to do.
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm really in awe with all that you have shared. Do you have a parting shot for us that my questions are done and what I wanted to focus on?
That I learn I think the other reason I love this work is it's never the same. I learn from the mothers. And, the big thing I've learned in Kenya is that, these mothers love to sing and dance, as you all do. And starting the workshop with these amazing, you call them warm-ups, but they're just musical sessions, has just been brilliant. I want Asmamo to start every workshop with Zumba. What is it? Sophia, where are you? Or I can't remember the name of the song, but I love it. And the mothers love it. And then you see the children doing it too. And it's just great.
It's amazing.
Can't have enough of it. So I've been the beneficiary here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's okay.